Imagine you are an Iranian IRGC commander standing on the bridge of a fast attack craft in the Strait of Hormuz. It is April 18, 2026, and you are feeling absolutely invincible. You just watched your government tear up a ceasefire, declare the world's most important waterway a locked zone, and you have just spent the morning harassing an Indian flag tanker called the Sanmar Herald. You fired on 2 million barrels of Iraqi oil just to prove a point. Despite that ship having a clearance number, you think you've won. You think the Americans are too distracted by politics or too scared of your 5,000 naval mines to do anything about it. You feel like the king of the world, poking a sleeping tiger with a stick made of steak and laughing because the tiger hasn't bitten back yet. But what you don't realize is that the tiger isn't sleeping. It's actually sitting right behind you. It's already calculated exactly how many calories you are, and it's just waiting for the perfect moment to erase you from the timeline. This is the story of Operation Epic Fury and how the United States Navy turned a 6-hour standoff into a masterclass in military humiliation. For 10 days, the world breathed a sigh of relief. A ceasefire was in place, oil prices were plunging, and it looked like the tension in the Middle East was finally cooling off. But the Iranian regime has a habit of mistaking American patience for American weakness. On April 18th, they decided to pull the ultimate bait and switch. Citing a supposed violation of the ceasefire, the IRGC declared the Strait of Hormuz a locked zone. This wasn't just a political statement, it was an act of global economic war. They started by targeting the Sanmar Herald, an Indian tanker carrying enough oil to power a small country for a month. They engaged it without warning, firing on a civilian crew in international waters. To the IRGC, this was a show of strength. To the United States Navy, this was an invitation to a party that Iran was not going to enjoy. Now, before we get into the actual fireworks, we need to talk about the sheer gap in technology we are dealing with here. On one side, you have the Iranian-flagged MV Touska. This is a 275-meter cargo ship, a massive, lumbering hunk of iron that moves through the water with the grace of a tectonic plate. It's an easy target, a floating warehouse that thinks it can hide in plain sight. Then you have the IRGC fast attack craft, essentially glorified jet skis with machine guns and a bad attitude. Their entire strategy is based on swarm tactics, trying to overwhelm a superior force with numbers, like a bunch of gnats trying to take down a windshield. On the other side of this equation, you have the USS Spruance, a 9,300-ton Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer. This isn't just a ship, it's a $1.8 billion floating fortress designed to kill everything within a 100-mile radius. The Spruance is packed with the Aegis combat system, an array of sensors so powerful it can track a golf ball moving at Mach 3 from hundreds of miles away. It's carrying a Mark 41 vertical launch system capable of raining down Tomahawk missiles or SM-6 interceptors with surgical precision. But the real star of the show on April 19th was the Mark 45 5-inch gun. This 54 caliber weapon system can fire 20 rounds per minute with an effective range of over 13 nautical miles. Each shell weighs about 70 pounds and hits with the force of a freight train. Comparing an IRGC patrol boat to the USS Spruance is like comparing a tricycle to a main battle tank. It's not just a different league, it's a different universe. And while the Iranians were busy high-fiving each other over their blockade, the Americans were deploying their secret weapon, Task Force 59. This is the U.S. Navy's Autonomous Engagement Web, a fleet of AI-driven drones and MQ-4C Tritons that were doing something the Iranians didn't even think was possible. Digital fingerprinting. While the IRGCs was busy turning off their AI-ass transponders, thinking they were becoming invisible to radar, Task Force 59 was busy extracting their DNA. Every ship has a unique acoustic signature, the way its propellers vibrate, the specific thermal displacement of its hull, the way it pushes water. The USAI drones were logging every single one of these metrics. The Iranians thought they were playing hide-and-seek in the dark, but the US had the night vision goggles. It was a digital blockade that Tehran didn't see coming, but the real disrespect. The financial kill switch. The USS Treasury had linked the Navy's real-time tracking data directly to Lloyd's of London. The moment a ship was flagged for a blockade violation, its maritime insurance was canceled in real time. This is the maritime equivalent of having your bank account frozen and your car repossessed while you're still driving it down the highway. Without insurance, these ships can't dock at any legal port in the world. They become international pariahs, floating junk piles with nowhere to go. This was the unseen threat lurking beneath the surface. The Iranians thought they were in control of the strait, but the US had already severed their economic carotid artery before a single shot was even fired. They were already dead in the water. They just hadn't realized it yet. The arrogance of the IRGC was about to meet the cold, hard reality of American engineering and a very pissed-off commander-in-chief who was tired of playing games. The climax of this drama began at 11:30 a.m. on April 19. The USS Spruance intercepted the MV Touska in the Gulf of Oman. The Spruance didn't just show up. It materialized like a ghost out of the haze, its gray hull cutting through the water with terrifying purpose. For 6 hours, the Americans gave the Iranians every chance to walk away. They issued radio orders: vacate your engine room, cease your non-compliant behavior. The Iranians, emboldened by their own propaganda, ignored the warnings. They thought the Spruance was just there for a photo op. They were wrong. As the sun beat down on the Gulf, the tension reached a breaking point. On the Spruance, the crew wasn't sweating. They were focused. They could smell the faint scent of salt air and the ozone from the electronic suites. They were waiting for the word, and then it came. The Mark 45 gun on the Spruance's bow traversed toward the Touska. This wasn't a warning shot across the bow. This was a targeted strike. The 5-inch gun barked, a thunderous crack that echoed across the water, sending a high explosive shell screaming toward the Touska's engine room. The impact was perfect. No massive explosion that would sink the ship and cause an environmental disaster. Just a precise, surgical disabling of the ship's propulsion. The Touska, a 275-meter beast, was suddenly a multi-million-dollar paperweight. But the flex wasn't over. While the smoke was still clearing from the engine room, the USS Tripoli was already in position. From its deck, MH-60R Seahawks and MV-22 Ospreys rose like a swarm of angry hornets. These weren't just any troops. These were the leathernecks of the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit. Fast roping onto a moving deck is a specialty of the MEU, and they did it with the kind of practiced ease that makes it look like a choreographed dance. Within minutes, the deck of the Touska was crawling with US Marines. Their M27 rifles leveled, their faces grim behind their ballistic visors. The Iranian crew, who moments ago were defiant, were now face down on the deck, realizing that the weak Americans had just seized their ship in the middle of their own supposed blockade. The aftermath was pure, unadulterated humiliation. Imagine the IRGC commanders back in Tehran, watching their prize cargo ship get hijacked by a single destroyer and a handful of Marines, while their entire Mosquito fleet of fast attack craft sat by, helpless to stop it. They had promised to lock the strait, but instead, they had just lost one of their most valuable assets and were now facing a total economic collapse. The blockade had already gutted their economy, reducing oil exports from 2 million barrels to basically zero. They were losing $300 to $500 million every single day. And then came the Sinatra signal. On the evening of April 18th, President Trump had posted a video of Frank Sinatra singing My Way on Truth Social. To the average person, it's just a classic song. To a military analyst, the lyrics "and now, the end is near. And so I face the final curtain" were a clear message. The final curtain was falling on the Iranian regime's ability to threaten global trade. The ultimatum from the White House was even more direct. If they don't sign this deal, the United States is going to knock out every single power plant and every single bridge in Iran. No more Mr. Nice Guy. While the second round of negotiations was happening in Islamabad, the US was making it clear that they weren't interested in talking anymore. They had the $20 billion offer on the table for Iran's uranium, sure, but they also had the USS Gerald R. Ford and the USS Abraham Lincoln sitting just over the horizon, ready to turn Iran's infrastructure into a memory. The IRGC pilots and captains who had been so arrogant just days before were now looking at their radar screens and seeing only ghosts and iron. Their pride was gone, replaced by the realization that they were outmatched, outgunned, and outsmarted at every single turn. This is what happens when you mistake American restraint for a lack of resolve. The US Navy doesn't need to yell to be heard. Sometimes it just needs to fire a single 5-inch shell into your engine room to let you know that the game is over. By seizing the MV Touska and severing the supply lines to the Houthis and Hezbollah, the United States didn't just win a naval engagement, they started the clock on the collapse of Iran's regional influence. The digital blockade and Task Force 59 have changed the rules of naval warfare forever. You can't hide, you can't run, and you certainly can't win. The USS Spruance and the 31st MEU showed the world that when the US says a waterway is open, it stays open. Whether it's through high-tech AI tracking or a good old-fashioned boarding party, the result is always the same: total American dominance. It's a lesson the IRGC is currently learning the hard way as they count their remaining days of power. This is why you don't mess with the United States Navy. They have the technology to track your ship's DNA, the financial muscle to cancel your insurance in the middle of the ocean, and the firepower to erase your engine room from 5 miles away without breaking a sweat. So, here's a question for you. If you were the captain of that Iranian cargo ship and you saw the USS Spruance on your horizon, would you have followed orders, or would you have waited for the Marines to drop in for a visit? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown of American military supremacy, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Military Doctrine for more deep dives into the world's most powerful fighting force. Until next time, stay vigilant.